good afternoon or good evening or good morning, depends how this is around you. And it's been, wow, it's been a week or a few weeks of, tremendous things happening. I said tremendous because it's unbelievable to some. That's the way I look at it. It's unbelievable how so soon the tide of the people can turn one way. And over the last few weeks, we've seen a calming down of people, which has been very good. It's been welcomed by all communities in and around the world, because Britain is a stalwart of justice, law and order, and all these things that we have come to learn to live with and welcome. Some of us in our heady days may look at this establishment in various different ways, depending on how we interact at that time. And as I said, heady days of the days of the 70s, the 80s, when things were just coming into play. We had the poll tax riots back then, and there were a lot of people who wouldn't normally fall foul of the law came into contact with the police through protests. There were a lot of video footage of protesters masking up, doing unlawful acts. We're not going to go into it because it was similar to what we saw the other week in this country. And I've tried to look at the argument from both sides. I've got to say that I have to look at this argument from all angles, from all the accusations to all the refuting of these allegations, and the law, how it looks at things, how the country looks at things, how I myself am looked at, how I have to then interact with the general public, how I've always seen the general public in my own interactions. It's been sort of it's interesting when you're a public servant, which we all are in some ways. We might not see ourselves as being public servants, but we're all servicing some form of the society that we live in. We serve a purpose. Police officers serve a purpose, ambulance officers, cricketers, sportsmen, footballers, wrestlers, we all serve a purpose. Everyday people, general public, we're all part of the society that we live in. So we have a duty to look after each other and to look to the future of the society and not hopefully bring it down. And we all have our own political views, and the political parties use this to their advantage. There are usually more than one particular political party in any country, but it seems to be nowadays that the more parties they all seem to have similar views somewhat in order to get into power. They all oppose each other when the government at the time, whichever political party that is, which we now know we have a Labour Party, and of course the Conservatives, who are the Tories, who have just come out of power, are running rampant with accusations, counter accusations, ideas, comments. Some of them have proven to be unlawful as well. They may not be fully paid up members of the Tory party, but they're connected to the Tory party. Their wives, husbands, children, grandparents, grandchildren are being hearing about what's going on and seeing it from their point of view. And their point of view is relevant to them, particularly those people, conservatives. Do I sway to any political party? Not really. I think all politicians basically urinate in the same pot, and we as the voters and the voices out here, hopefully speaking for each other, we have a balanced view of this. We know that we have to vote for one party, in particular one that serves a purpose for the wider community, and both parties have relevant views. to me, myself. And when I listen to all sides of the argument on the table that's going on now, particularly because we're living in 2024, and if we compare it to the 70s, it's not even, it doesn't really compare. We didn't even have all of these things that we have now, but it's being compared to the 70s. And this is quite strange to me, as I've been doing a program about the 70s and how it was, different, and how, certain things, certain views were commonplace. We now see that again. People are coming out with their own views, using words I've never heard for a long time. Certain language I've not heard from people, and I expect to hear it from people so young as well. But this is again a reflection of the wider society. We have this in football, we have the chants that go on, we have the derogatory remarks that go on. Footballers know this, and it's I take my hat off to all the young players out there, whatever colour you are. If you have to face hostile crowds, I'm sure it's frightening for you. It's not the nicest possible way to say that you have to make a living, but that is why they're paid so much money, because there's a lot of things that they have to go through. Most of us wouldn't be able to cope with the stress and the strain, and this leads to us understanding that everybody's a human being. We had people out on the streets the other day who are human beings as well. They may have not been behaving in the way, and now we see that in the courts, how the courts have come swiftly down upon these people, and it serves as a warning, as I would say, to most people who don't understand the difference between protesting and what we saw the other day. And I'm not going to reiterate or go on what I saw, but I've never behaved like that over something I was protesting about. I may have behaved badly over things I was emotionally involved in, and that's my own opinion of the situations that I've ever been involved in. I'm not saying that we don't get angry, we don't get emotionally upset, and the issues that underline some of the things that are happening in the country are emotional. So I think it's better, when you're feeling in that way, not to be out in the public with people who you don't really get on with. That's a sensible thing for anybody to do. If you're feeling angry, I spoke about how people, especially young men, can relay some of this stress and get it out of themselves is by talking about it. And there's other things you can do as well. I'm not going to go into everything that you can do, but talking is one of the greatest things we can do. Vlogging, and some of the way that the internet has used some of the political ideas of other people to then suppress other people's ideas, it's not very good as well, because they're supposed to be setting a sort of broad standard of living, how people should live together. These platforms, they have no color, they don't have no sort of the buttons that we press, they don't automatically don't work because your hand is of a different belief than the company that you're using. It doesn't work like that. And these are riddles that I put in there, and I'm sure the companies think that they have a duty of care to look after what they believe or their own interests and the interests of the wider community. But the wider community is us, people who use your platform. So if we're using the platforms and we're being lawful, we should have the platform open to us to say those views. People who are being unlawful, you shouldn't be giving them the platforms. And that's the unbalance. And this is where I think the two-tier, it doesn't just come into policing, it comes into society. We have a two-tier way of dealing with people. We see this in the wage structure, how some people go to a job, they don't understand the politics that go on between some of the standards that have been set. So the standards have been set by certain communities. So these communities have been able to get people in these groups on the boards, sitting there making decisions, and then deciding that what is the best steps to take. let's look at the analogy of employment. If a lot of the people on the board have the same views and of the same group, then they are going to basically have the same ideas and ideology and then overlook other groups. Sometimes this happens. I'm not saying it's supposed to happen, but let's look at policies. Let's look at not just policing as a policy, but look at policies, because we should be policing ourselves on how our views come across. And if we're acting unfairly towards one set of group, we should then be able to balance that out, because we want to get the best. Unfortunately, the way people look at things, it's complicated. It's very complicated, because somebody might think that that idea that somebody else brings is a better idea, or they come with more, they offer more to the table of that company. So that company then takes that person on board, not knowing that person's going to underperform, and then they've overlooked other people in the job market who could have performed better, but because they seemingly didn't fit the criteria. And this is something that it's politics, it's policies that we can't always address. We can't always just balance this out simply, but we can be aware of it and aware that other people outside of your company are aware of this. And the statistics show this. The market for young black males who are graduated, they find it a lot more difficult to find a job than their counterparts. And this is just one way of looking at it. We can also look at it through how the protesters were looking at it. They were looking at how communities are being given an easier road into the society, the British society, which they've had to work for, their grandparents have had to work for, hopefully build up some pot for them to be able to tap into if needed be. Some of them are able to do that. So the unbalance within their own community is not always a product of outside factors. Outside factors may have a bearing on it. The plight of the immigrants is a responsibility of us all. England has always been a country that has been a haven for refugees, and I'm going to repeat that. This has happened throughout the centuries. It's always gone on. England has always taken on people into this country. Maybe because we're surrounded by water, that people then are now looking at England more than they're looking at the rest of Europe. The rest of Europe is vast, but they're not readily taking these people on board. And the plight of these people is worse in these other countries. I can only speak for what I have seen. I've been through Europe, and I'm not going to tear down Europe. I'm not going to tear down the countries. But there is a problem throughout the world with how people are living in ramshackled accommodations to survive. Had my parents come over in that time, I'm sure I would be speaking from the same point of view as those people, which was similar, but our parents had a plan. My parents had a plan. The people who come over may not have a very distinct plan. The people who are here taking them on, the governments, do they have a plan to how they're going to deal with this problem? Because obviously the people are not happy. And I'm only saying that because that's what people are saying. I'm not saying that I'm happy with the situation. I'm not saying I can't see what's going on. I can see a lot of what's going on. I've looked at certain things, and I don't want to be sort of dogmatic in saying that when information is given to you, you are going to process it in a way. You're a human being. You're limited in how you can sort of basically respond to things that you're given, like especially through the internet. With a book, you can close the book. With the internet, I suppose, yeah, you can turn it off after a bit. I would advise people when when they're listening to something and it's not really resonating with their own self, then just turn that off, because you can't indoctrinate yourself into a belief that might not be your own. And I think being self-reflective helps you to understand who you are not just who your community is and your family and your friends and the wider society. You have to understand yourself. And when you're committing an act based on what you've been told, what your inner feelings are happening, and then your own situation can sometimes from day to day be fucked up. You know, it can be totally effed up on that particular day. Oh, I've had enough. I'm hearing that a lot. I'm hearing that a lot. People have had enough, and it's a saying that they're not now using, and it's not a saying that we don't usually use, but I think it just shows the incompetence of the parties and the governments to really listen to what the people on the ground are saying, the workers, the shoppers, all people, the communities who are affected. We have to listen to them, and they have to then clean up their own communities. There's definitely a problem of shame within each community and acceptance to what our community or people or in our communities are doing, whether you're from any community. I'm not going to distinguish between the communities. The communities know who they are. You could be a community of friends. You could just be neighbours who believe that you're all a community, and you're of different denominations and different backgrounds, different ethnicity as well. This shouldn't be a problem to you airing out your differences, personal differences. That's different. That's you might need to have a mediator in there if it's personal, because you shouldn't bring those out into the wider public audience because it's personal. And some things that are we believe are personal are not personal because they're affecting other people. So we might, as a community, believe that then we don't want to talk about it. We don't want other people to talk about it. We don't want people to criticize us. We don't want people to criticize what we do or even our beliefs. That's not possible, mates and females and men, whoever you are. We all are going to face criticism, and whether we like it or not, that's what's going to happen. Unfortunately, when you look at some of the information out there, it's going to upset certain people just for you looking at that information, and that is a problem because we should be allowed to look at that information. Then what may happen is that people who this information may or may not be accusing them of something, they definitely take it personally, or they believe that their ideology allows them to then take it to whatever steps they believe. We call this gangsterism, we call this hitmen, we call this violence, we call this killing. This is what could also goes on, whether it be in the name of your religion or in the name of your ideology. This is what it is. And regardless if it brings shame to you, people outside of your communities are not as afraid or don't feel that same shame, because if it was happening within their community, then it would be spoken about, because it's public knowledge, it's public information. And public information is often what journalists use. And I use the term journalist because part of this issue has been to do with the media, and some of them are classed as journalists, and some of them are reporters. A particular figure who is central in the protesters' minds and other people's minds on their own ideology makes a claim to be a journalist background, so definitely supports this theory and what he's saying or what she is saying, because I'm not going to put any category or race to this person, because even in the protesters' minds, they are not racist, they are not Islamophobic in any way, or not against any religion. They're not against black people, they're not against Jews. So we have to sort of look at what their background is, and if their background is in journalism, they're going to be quite good at finding out information. And listening to both sides of the argument, I come across some of this information and I try to get it from the horse's mouth, if you catch the pun. So it's better to get the full information from the person than to hear what other people are saying that this person is saying. And this is what I always believe. It's a great mantra to have, because somebody else is telling me what that person said, and it might well be true. But we can look into all sorts of semantics behind that. And I don't want to cause paranoia. I don't want to cause any uprising of tension. I want people to see that we can sit and listen to every side of the argument, because it's the best way to find out what's really going on. It's not about keeping your enemies close or whatever. You don't have to associate with people who you're going to feel uncomfortable around. And I would definitely say that to most people. I wouldn't really have a confrontation or a conversation even with somebody I know is going to go, south very quickly, because I'm myself and they're going to be who they are. And that's smart thinking. It's not fear. It's not the fear factor going on. It's just about being smart nowadays. Especially when you get to my age, I've learned to be very smart in who I ever am around, because a lot of these people are influential in who they have around them. So I don't think that they themselves aspire to the violent side of how things are. They're grown up. They've grown out of that. They may have come into that organized world. Football hooliganism. Who wasn't involved in that? Great bunch of lads they are organized in what they were doing. We all know the stories of what they got involved with. They got involved with drugs, the sex trafficking, everything. So that went on within the footballing. It goes on with more societies. We had then in the 80s and the 90s where we saw the rise of the sort of ecstasy and that, but we also saw the rise of cocaine, crack cocaine on our streets, and that was definitely round about where I was, who then had their stint of when they were doing things that it was on the news. It was scary at the time to be living amongst that and to be going out in the clubs around that. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to say that it was just a walk in the park hill. And these are some of the sayings we hear now about this fakeness. It was a lot of it came from a lot of the situations that bust out in the 2000s and beyond, and we saw then that had to be dispersed. It had to go away, and I spoke up against that a lot in my music and in public. Came into clashes with some of these sort of groups of people myself, because I had to stand up for my own community. And some people said, nah, this guy is one of them. I don't really care what people think. I know I've never really cared in my own community how people look at me, because I'm here to survive like they are. I'm also here to keep the peace, and if necessary I've had to then defend what my beliefs are, and my beliefs are strong. I will speak up and against injustice wherever I see it. It doesn't matter where it is, and it's not me bragging or saying that I'm Superman or anything like that. No, no, mate, nothing like that. It's about being real. And I'm saying that some of the arguments that I'm hearing out there are people being realistic. They're being real about what they see, how they see things, and that is always refreshing for somebody like me, because I can hear it from both sides, and I don't have an emotional dislike of people in that way. They just say it's just things that people say. You can get over it. It does affect you at the time, but if you're a smart person, it's sticks and stones, mate. It's always been sticks and stones. But we often forget the followers. I won't agree with, but some of the leaders, I've got to then listen to what they're saying, and I also got to listen to some of the victims of some of the allegations. And I say allegations because the amount of people that have been prosecuted, there have been a lot of allegations. Going to what these allegations are, but there's been a lot of different allegations, and these are public records. So I'm not stirring up for people to, look at things on balance. I put out some information about immigration and crime, and there is things to look at. I'm not going to say what I believe we all who live in these communities, we see and we hear about it, or we affected. I think then that again is going to influence you. What you've seen is going to influence you. What you hear is going to influence you, and very much what your own fears are is going to be the driving force to how you vote and how you then make decisions, especially on emotive situations and emotive issues. So I'm not going to be superficial and say that that things don't hurt people. If you say the wrong thing to certain people, they're going to take it very offensively. So I'm not going to accuse any community of wrongdoing, because I think all communities have done wrong. The sex trafficking allegations that going on out there, it's been accused against Asian gangs. It was also being accused off the record by other people that it's other groups. Official words that I've seen, I've not heard any other words from the official people saying anything else other than the predominant number of people, and they do point to a specific group within the Asian category. So we have to then look at the broader term of the term Asian, because not every Asian has the same religion. We have different religions within the Asian groups. I'm going to reiterate that. So just to be called Asian does not mean that you're from one particular country. To be of certain religions, you don't have to be of one particular race. So this is what you've got to work out, what's going on in there. I kind of see what's being said. I'm not going to say I can work it all out, because there's a bigger, broader picture. There's a massive picture here that we are not always privy to. That information, we get public information, and we can talk about that hopefully in a calm way and not to incite violence against anybody. We shouldn't incite that, regardless of how we feel about that information, because we might have got it wrong. We might have misinterpreted the numbers, the figures of what it's really saying. So we might need to read it again or read through it thoroughly, and this takes time. So don't take in information, especially off the internet and off people like myself, and think that yes, this guy he's influenced me to think different. No, I'm not here to influence you. I'm an influential person, and I think influential people influence other people then to speak about things, speak about it openly and calmly. Hope that's what I want to influence you now to do, not what I say on the way I do things. That's influential. It's not about what I'm saying here. If you want to swipe all that and then erase all that, that doesn't matter to me, because I'm just saying my views and what my thoughts are. It's like having a little journal, a little diary out here that you can use, speak to people, like-minded people who, we still have fire inside of us. We still have a lot of things, emotional trauma that we've all got to deal with, and we're dealing with it better than some people. It's not about the finances. That comes with finding yourself and finding the things that are right for you. Hopefully that brings in things for you. It's a difficult place to be out here, regardless of you believe that you're a good person, you deserve the best. It's also good to be educated on how you can get those things. Some people have learned to scam the systems, and then they are on a higher seat because they've got everything. They've already got everything, and they're not telling you this. They're not telling a lot of us all these things. They're not telling us how they're getting their wealth, how they achieve their wealth. And is this unfair? This is classed as being clever. This is what capitalism is. So you've also got to look at the societies we live in. We live in a capitalist society. People look at opportunities. Even thieves, they're looking at opportunities. They're looking at, there's a lot more wealth in these countries, so they go around people who are, they think that's got it to lose, and it's unfair. It's very unfair, because they're often put in areas around people who are just building themselves up. These communities are just coming out of their own financial turmoil, just finding their own feet. And are they cared for by society? Sometimes they're not. I don't think they also often understand how they are seen by the political elite. They are seen as the unwashed, That is what they're classed as. When you study about how the elite look at everybody, not just black people are already seen as whatever, you know what I mean? Subhuman. And I have to laugh at these sayings, and I have to laugh at when people say that they're superior, because they're not superior. They have managed to wrangle their way into power, and then they use a lot of the times skullduggery, things behind closed doors to achieve their goals, turn people against each other, turn the people who are the masses, who, as I said, they don't really class you as much. You know, they class you as servants, same way in the service industry. They'll use you against each other, they'll pit you against each other. And I'm not going to look at just the elite. I'm not just going to look at any particular group who've got that power. Sometimes it's just people in power. They gain this power and they're not really of any particular bloodline. So we're not going to go down that route right now. Because as I said, I'm not here to stir up any conspiracy theories, but I'm just going to tell you how things are and how society runs. And we all have to be aware of that. And that's makes life easier for you. It doesn't mean that you won't get targeted because you know this information. You're still going to be a problem. So in your own communities, you're going to have poor people who are always going to want to try and get, and you can't help everybody. The problem's bigger than, just one particular charity organization. I remember they had something in Sheffield, and this is going to be the final point I put out there, that they had a soup kitchen in Sheffield, and I'm going to look at it from all sides, especially in this argument, that the soup kitchen was running in the city centre, serving hot food, free food for underprivileged, homeless people, starving families even probably could use it. Then came the complaints after a few weeks. I've seen on the internet and various different publications that they were looking to stop this. I didn't really sort of jump on it and think, oh well, this is wrong or whatever. I just thought, well, this is what's going to happen. I did think it was wrong because I'm thinking, well, they're giving these people food, they're giving them, which is a brilliant idea. Is it sustainable? Probably not. But yeah, as I said, they stopped it, and I'm going to look at it from both sides. How the council probably worded it, why they stopped it. And I might be wrong here, so don't quote me on that. I'm listening to anything off the internet. I'm not trying to accuse the council, but maybe the council is saying that this is going to attract more vulnerable people, and then also there's a knock-on effect for businesses who are serving or paying taxes as well. So there's all different sides to look at it, and I don't aspire to being the devil's advocate on any situation. There's certain situations there's no way I could be in the middle of somebody attacking somebody who's innocent. That's I could not be a referee. I'm just going to side with the innocent person. It's just my default mode. I've had to learn to sort of be less like that as I've got older, because it's just better to not be that person who because sometimes you don't know how emotionally and what connection there is, and sometimes there is this thing called trauma bonding. People were bonded to this person, this abuse, and then when this abuse goes on, then that person doesn't want anybody really to intervene. So yeah, as I said, yeah, helping people is a good thing, and I hope more people look at certain enterprises and initiatives that we can do possibly to help other people in the best way that we can, and hopefully that we're not being in any way condescending when we're helping them.